Tonight we're stepping back 1,000 years. Join us inside the Samguk Yusa, the memorabilia of the Three Kingdoms, gathered long ago by the monk Iryeon. Tonight's stories carry us through the final days of Silla's kings, the roots of the kingdom of Baekje, and the tale of a poor boy who once dug for yams and grew up to become a king. Empires rise, empires fall, and somewhere in between, ordinary people go on living their lives. Let go of today's noise and settle into this low, steady voice. Somewhere along the way, you'll find your mind growing quiet, and sleep will come to meet you. King Gyeongae. In the second year of the Dongguang era, the year Gapjin, on the 19th day of the second month, the 55th king Gyeongae took the throne. At Hwangyongsa Temple, he invited 100 monks to lecture on Buddhist scripture, holding what was called the 100-seat Sutra Assembly. He also made offerings to 300 meditation monks. The great king himself burned incense and presented offerings. This 100-seats assembly was the very first of its kind, uniting both the Seon and Gyo schools of Buddhism. King Gimbu, the Great King. The 56th king, King Gimbu, was given the posthumous name Gyeongsun. In the second year of the Cheonsong era, the year Gyeongae, in the 9th month, Gyeonhwan of Baekje invaded Silla and reached Gulbu. King Gyeongae sent word to Taejo of Goryeo asking for aid. Taejo ordered his generals to send 10,000 strong soldiers to the rescue. But before the rescuing army could arrive, in the 11th month of that winter, Gyeonhwan struck suddenly at the royal capital. At that time, the king was enjoying a feast at Poseokcheong Pavilion with his consorts and royal relatives, unaware that enemy soldiers had already broken through. In the chaos, no one knew what to do. The king and queen fled into the rear palace. Royal relatives, nobles, and women scattered in every direction, only to be captured by the enemy. Regardless of rank, they crawled on the ground, begging to be spared even as slaves. Gyeonhwan let his soldiers loose to plunder both public and private wealth. He entered the royal palace and took up residence there, ordering his men to search for the king. The king, the queen, and a few concubines, who had been hiding in the rear palace, were dragged before his camp. Gyeonhwan forced the king to take his own life. He violated the queen and let his soldiers loose upon the other consorts and concubines as well. He then placed the king's distant cousin, Gimbu, on the throne. The new king, raised up by Gyeonhwan himself, took the fallen king's body, laid it in state, and wept together with his ministers. Our own Taejo sent envoys to offer condolences and hold memorial rites. The following year, the year Muja, in the 3rd month of spring, Taejo led some 50 riders on a tour of the capital region. The king went out to the outskirts with his officials to welcome him, brought him into the palace, and treated him with the utmost sincerity and courtesy. At a banquet held in Imhaejeon Hall, as the wine flowed, the king spoke. "I failed to receive heaven's protection, and slowly brought this calamity upon myself. Gyeonhwan acted with such reckless injustice that he ruined our country. How could there be a grief greater than this?" He wept bitterly as he said this, and there was not a single minister present who did not weep along with him. Even Taejo shed tears. Taejo stayed for several dozen days before turning his carriage homeward. His soldiers moved with such solemn discipline that they did not disturb so much as a single hair of autumn grass. The men and women of the capital congratulated one another, saying, "When Gyeonhwan came before, it was like meeting a wolf or a tiger, but now when Lord Wang comes, it feels like seeing one's own parents." In the 8th month, Taejo sent envoys bearing silk robes and a saddled horse for the king, along with gifts of varying worth for the officials and generals. In the 2nd year of the Cheongtai era, the year Ulmi, in the 10th month, the lands on every side had all fallen into others' hands. The kingdom had grown weak and isolated, unable to protect itself any longer. The king consulted his ministers and decided to surrender the entire kingdom to Taejo. Opinions among the ministers were sharply divided, and the debate would not end. The crown prince spoke. "The survival of a nation always rests with the mandate of heaven. We should gather the hearts of loyal ministers and righteous men, rally the people's spirit, and fight with everything we have, giving up only when our strength is truly spent. How could we so lightly hand over 1,000 years of our sacred kingdom to another?" The king replied, "Isolated and endangered as we are, we cannot hope to remain whole. We can neither grow strong again nor weaken any further. I cannot bear to see the livers and brains of innocent people scattered upon the earth." And so he sent his minister Gimbu, bearing a formal letter to offer his surrender to Taejo. The crown prince wept aloud as he bid farewell to his father and went into the deep mountains of Gyeonggae, making his home leaning against a rock. He wore rough hempen cloth, ate wild roots, and lived out the rest of his life there. The youngest son shaved his head, entered the Hwayom school of Buddhism, and became a monk under the name Beomgong. He later lived at Beopsusa and Hinsa temples. Taejo received the letter of surrender and sent his minister Wang Chol to welcome the royal party. The king led his officials in submission to our Taejo. Fragrant carriages and horses adorned with treasures stretched for over 30 rai, and onlookers lined the road like a wall. Taejo went out to the outskirts himself to comfort and welcome them. He granted the king a fine district east of the palace and gave his eldest daughter, Princess Nang, to him in marriage. To comfort the king for having left his own country to live in another, Taejo compared the princess to a phoenix and renamed her Princess Silla, giving her the posthumous name Hyomok. He named the king prime minister, ranking him even above the crown prince, and granted him a stipend of 1,000 sok. All the officials and generals who had served him were likewise given positions. Silla was renamed Gyeongju and made the king's own fief. When the king first offered up his country and surrendered, Taejo was overjoyed. He treated him with the utmost ceremony and sent an envoy to say, "Now that your majesty has given your kingdom to me, this kindness is immense. I wish to bind our houses together through marriage and forge a lasting bond of father and son-in-law." The king answered, "My uncle Iryeon has a daughter, both virtuous and beautiful in appearance. If not for her, no one else could properly manage the inner household." Taejo took her as his wife, and she became known as Queen Sinsong of the Gim clan. Taejo's grandson, King Gyeongjong, later took the daughter of the prime minister as his wife, making her Queen Hyonsong, and the prime minister was further honored with the title Sangbo. In the third year of the Taepyeong Honguk era, the year Muin, the king passed away, and he was given the posthumous name Gyeongsun. The historian's commentary says this: the Bak and Sok clans of Silla were said to have been born from eggs, and the Gim clan was said to have descended from heaven, riding a golden chest, or perhaps a golden carriage. These stories are so strange that they are hard to believe, and yet popular tradition has always held them to be true. Still, if we look only at their beginnings, we find that those above were humble and generous toward those below. They kept official posts simple and conducted their affairs plainly, serving China with the utmost sincerity. Tribute envoys crossed the sea without end, and the sons of noble families were regularly sent to serve at court and study in its schools. In this way, Silla absorbed the teachings and refinement of the sages, transformed its rough customs, and became a nation of propriety. Relying also on the might of its armies, it pacified Baekje and Goryeo, taking their lands and turning them into provinces and counties. It could truly be called a flourishing kingdom, and yet in embracing the teachings of Buddhism, the kingdom failed to see its harm. Pagodas and temples rose in every village, and ordinary people fled into monkhood, until soldiers and farmers grew ever fewer, and the nation weakened with each passing day. How could it not fall into disorder and ruin? By the time King Gyeongae added reckless pleasure upon pleasure, going out to Paseokjong with his attendants to hold feasts, never keeping watch, he did not even notice when Gyeonhwan came crashing in. That King Gyeongsun entrusted his fate to Taejo and submitted to him was, though unavoidable, still a commendable act. Had he instead fought to the death and resisted Taejo's army, only to be broken and crushed in the end, his entire clan would surely have been overturned, and innocent people would have suffered as well. Instead, without waiting to be forced, he sealed the treasuries, recorded the provinces and counties, and submitted of his own will. His service to the new court and his kindness to the people were very great indeed. Long ago, when Lord Jeon offered up the kingdom of Wuyue and entered the Song court, the scholar Soja Chom called him a loyal subject. The virtue and merit of Silla's surrender far surpass even that. Our Taejo had many consorts, and his descendants flourished widely. King Hyunjong, who later ascended the throne, was himself a grandson of Silla through his mother's line, and all who inherited the succession afterward were his descendants as well. How could this not be a hidden blessing? After Silla had given up its lands and the kingdom had ceased to exist, an official named Sinhoe, having completed his term in a provincial post, returned to find the capital in ruins. He is said to have sighed the words "so-ri-ri" and composed a song about it, though that song has since been lost and its details are no longer known. Nambuyeo, formerly Baekje, and Bukbuyeo. Buyeo County was once the royal capital of Baekje and is also known as Soburi County. Looking at the history of the three kingdoms, in the 26th year of King Song of Baekje, the year Muo, in spring, the capital was moved to Sabi, and the kingdom's name was changed to Nambuyeo, meaning Southern Buyeo. This was because the royal house of Baekje bore the surname Buyeo. It is also sometimes called Yeoju. On a raised seat at Jabuksa Temple, west of the county, there hangs an embroidered curtain, and its embroidered inscription reads, "The 15th year of Tongwa, the year Jeongyu, the 5th month, made by great master Gongdeok of Yeoju." In ancient times, an inspector was stationed at Imju, south of the Han River, and in the maps and household records of that time, the two characters, Yeoju, appear. Imju corresponds to today's Gyeongae County, and Yeoju corresponds to today's Buyeo County. The geography of Baekje and the Book of the Later Han record that there were 78 small states within the three Han confederacies, and that Baekje was one among them. The history of the northern dynasties states that Baekje bordered Silla to the east, was blocked by the Great Sea to the southwest, and touched the Han River to the north. Its capital was called Gyeobalseong, or sometimes Gomaseong, and beyond it stood 5 additional fortress towns. The basic annals record that the founder of Baekje was Onjo. His father, King Chumo, also known as Jumong, had fled troubles in Bukbuyeo and arrived at Jolbon-Buyeo. The king of that land had no son, only 3 daughters. Seeing that Jumong was no ordinary man, the king gave him his second daughter in marriage. Not long after, the king of Buyeo died, and Jumong succeeded to the throne. He had 2 sons, the elder named Biryu and the younger named Onjo. Later, fearing they would not be accepted by the crown prince, the 2 brothers set out southward with 10 loyal ministers, including Ogan and Marieo. Many of the common people followed them. They eventually reached Hansan, climbed Buak Peak, and surveyed the land in search of a place to settle. Biryu wished to live by the sea, but the 10 ministers advised against it, saying, "Only this land south of the Han Riv. Is what we need, bordered to the north by the Han River like a sash, resting to the east against high mountain peaks, facing fertile marshlands to the south, and blocked by the Great Sea to the west. Given such a naturally defensible land, so difficult to find elsewhere, would it not be right to establish our capital here?" Biryu did not listen. He divided the people and returned to settle at Michuhol instead. Onjo established his capital at Wirye Fortress, south of the Han River, appointing the 10 ministers as his aides, and named his kingdom Sipje. This was in the 3rd year of Honga, under Emperor Cheng of the Han dynasty. Biryu found that the land at Michuhol was damp and its water too salty to live comfortably, and so he returned to Wirye Fortress. Seeing that the capital had grown stable and the people lived in peace, he was overcome with shame and regret, and soon after died. His ministers and people all returned to Wirye Fortress as well. Because the people had rejoiced and celebrated when they first arrived there, the kingdom's name was later changed to Baekje. Since their lineage, like that of Goryeo, came originally from Buyeo, they took the surname Hae. Later, under King Song, the capital was moved to Sabi, which is today's Buyeo County. According to old records, Onjo, the 3rd son of King Dongmyong, arrived at Wirye Fortress from Jolbon-Buyeo in the 3rd year of Honga of the former Han dynasty, the year Gyeyu, established his capital and declared himself king. In the 14th year, the year Byongjin, the capital was moved to Hansan, present-day Gwangju, where it remained for 389 years. By the reign of the 13th king, Gonchogo, in the 1st year of Hamnan, the southern Pyongyang held by Goryeo was seized, and the capital moved to Bukhansong, present-day Yangju, remaining there for 105 years. The 22nd king, Munju, came to the throne, and in the 3rd year of Wonwi, the year Ulmyo, moved the capital to Ungcheon, present-day Gwangju, remaining there for 63 years. The 26th king, Song, moved the capital to Soburi and renamed the kingdom Nambuyeo. This continued until the 31st king, Uija, spanning 120 years. In the 5th year of Gyeongae of the Tang dynasty, the 20th year of King Uija's reign, General Kim Yu-sin of Silla joined forces with Su Dingfang of Tang to conquer and pacify the kingdom. Baekje once had 5 administrative divisions governing 37 counties, 200 fortress towns, and 760,000 households. There is also a rock called Jongsa-am at Hwamsa Temple. Whenever the state needed to select a chief minister, the names of 3 or 4 candidates would be written down, sealed inside a box, and placed upon this rock. After a short while, the box would be opened, and whoever's name bore the mark of a seal would be chosen as chief minister. This is how the rock came to be named. There is also a rock along the banks of the Sabi River where Su Dingfang is said to have once sat and fished up both fish and a dragon. A mark said to be from a dragon kneeling upon the rock remains there still, and so it came to be called Yeongam, the Dragon Rock. Within the county there also stand 3 mountains, Ilsan, Osan, and Busan. In the days when the nation flourished, divine beings were said to dwell atop each of these peaks, flying back and forth between them without pause, morning and evening. Along the Sabi riverbank, there is yet another rock, large enough to seat about 10 people. Whenever the king of Baekje traveled to Wanghungsa Temple to pay respects to the Buddha, he would first bow toward the Buddha from atop this rock. Each time, the rock was said to grow warm on its own, and so it came to be called Hwadolseok, the warming stone. The 2 banks of the Sabi River were also said to resemble a painted folding screen, and the kings of Baekje would often come there to hold feasts, sing, and dance. To this day, the place is still called Dawangpo. The founder Anjo, 3rd son of King Dongmyeong, was said to be large and imposing in stature, filial and devoted to his family, and skilled in both horsemanship and archery. King Daru was known for his generosity and dignified bearing. King Sabi succeeded to the throne after King Gusu's death, but being too young to govern, he was soon deposed, and King Goi was placed on the throne in his stead. The 30th king, Mu, was named Jang. His mother, a widow living alone, built her home beside a pond south of the capital. There she came together with the dragon of the pond and gave birth to a son. His childhood name was Seodong. His true abilities were hard to measure. He made his living by digging up yams and selling them, and so the people of the land took this to be his name. Hearing that the 3rd princess of King Jimpyeong of Silla, Princess Seonhwa, was beautiful beyond compare, he shaved his head and traveled to the Silla capital. There he handed out yams to the neighborhood children. As the children grew fond of him, he composed a song and taught it to them so that they would sing it themselves. Princess Seonhwa has secretly taken a husband. At night, she slips away to hold Seodong in her arms. The children's song spread throughout the capital until it reached even the palace itself. The court officials pressed the king urgently, and Princess Seonhwa was banished, sent far away into exile. As she departed, the queen gave her a measure of pure gold to see her on her way. As the princess was nearing the place of her exile, Seodong appeared along the road, bowing before her and offering to accompany her on her journey. The princess did not know who he was or where he had come from, but for some reason she came to trust him and was glad of his company. She followed him and secretly gave herself to him in love. Only afterward did she learn his name and come to believe that the children's song had indeed come true. Together they arrived in Baekje. When the princess brought out the gold the queen had given her, meaning to use it to build a life together, Seodong laughed heartily and asked, "What is this thing?" The princess answered, "This is gold. With it, one could live in wealth for 100 years. Seodong said, "Where I used to dig for yams as a boy, this stuff is piled up like mud." Hearing this, the princess was greatly astonished and said, "This is the greatest treasure under heaven. If you truly know where this gold can be found, why not send this treasure back to my parents in the palace?" Seodong agreed that this was a fine idea. And so they gathered up the gold into a great mound and went to the monk Jimyeong at Sajasa Temple on Mount Yonghwa, to ask how they might send it. The monk said, "With my spiritual power, I can send it. Bring the gold to me." The princess wrote a letter, and together with the gold, laid it before Sajasa temple. Through his spiritual power, the monk delivered it in a single night, straight into the Silla palace. King Jimpyong, astonished at this miraculous feat, came to hold Sodong in even greater esteem, and would often send letters to ask after his well-being. In this way, Sodong won the hearts of the people, and in time he ascended to the throne. One day, the king and his queen were traveling to Sajasa temple, and as they approached the great pond at the foot of Mount Yonghwa, the Maitreya triad, 3 sacred images of the future Buddha, appeared in the middle of the pond. The king stopped his carriage and paid his respects. The queen said to the king, "It would truly be my wish to build a great temple upon this very spot." The king granted her wish and went to the monk Jimyong to ask how the pond might be filled in. Through his spiritual power, in a single night, a mountain was leveled and the pond filled to become solid ground. There, halls to enshrine the 3 Maitreya images, along with pagodas and covered walkways, were built in 3 separate places, and the temple was named Maruksa, the Temple of Maitreya. King Jimpyong sent craftsmen to help with the construction, and the temple still stands there to this day. That's tonight's journey through 1,000 years of history. Kingdoms rose, kingdoms fell, and through it all, people kept loving, kept hoping, kept living, exactly where they stood. If even a small piece of tonight's story stayed with you, we're glad you were here. Slow Night Ancient Tales will be back tomorrow with another story from the past. If these stories help you rest, subscribing, liking, and turning on notifications means a great deal to us. Sleep well tonight. Good night.